Politicians use asylum seekers and undocumented migrants as a political tool, many linking migration to crime across the U.S. But the available data paints a different picture. Omar Villafranca traveled to the southern border and Washington, D.C. to find out if the rhetoric matches the reality.
We have 110 miles of border with the Mexican state of Coahuila in our county. My citizens are safe. In the rural part of the county, out west, we don't know what's happening out there. We don't know who's coming across. This debate, it goes back and forth. You got the far left and you got the far right, and those folks ain't gonna accomplish anything. We're gonna hit about 3 or 4 spots today.
Okay. Democrat Joe Frank Martinez is the sheriff here in Valverde County, Texas, right on the U.S.-Mexico border. Last fiscal year, U.S. Border Patrol agents encountered more than 2 million undocumented migrants, and federal data shows that less than 0.5% of those people had a history of violent or drug-related criminal convictions.
When you hear people say, like, out on the campaign trail, oh, the border towns are overrun, and where the migrants are crossing, those towns are now crime-ridden.
They don't have the facts. Do these criminals come across with these groups? Yeah, they do. The way it's put out there, it's sold, it's basically everybody that comes out here is a criminal.
Taking a look at who some of these people are in terms of criminals, drug dealers, gang members.
It's poisoning the blood of our country. It's so bad.
The connection between the southern border crisis and our addiction epidemic back home could not be any clearer.
Dan Stein is the president of the Federation for American Immigration Reform, or FAIR.
How influential do you think FAIR is in legislation?
FAIR's influence is enormous because we marry a populist position with great expertise.
A special interest group that works with members of Congress to reduce overall immigration.
We are constantly in Congress telling them, look, you have to be careful when you legislate immigration. Give them the proper language, the proper concepts, and the marketing technique to sell those ideas.
Do you think tying immigration and crime is fair?
There's clearly a correlation between immigration and crime because if somebody's here illegally, by definition, he has to commit a crime. There is an intentional effort by states and localities not to track immigration status and criminal behavior for political reasons. It is almost impossible to get good data by design.
Then why do you say that immigration equals crime?
Let's take a look at a couple. There are some objective indicators.
The only state that basically keeps data is Texas. And
no.
And they use a bunch of CBP data that everybody agrees on. Southern Poverty Law Center has said that you guys are on their list as a hate group based on things people have said in your organization, and that's where the legislation is based.
How do you respond to stupid smears? Why would you want to attack an organization that simply wants to serve the general public's interest in proper immigration controls?
When Republican Texas Governor Greg Abbott started busing thousands of migrants to Democrat-run cities like New York, Denver, and Washington, D.C., the immigrants as criminals rhetoric got louder. CBS News reached out to these cities, and officials told us that kind of data is not recorded.
And we see always that the crime rate for the U.S. citizens is much higher, more than double, from the undocumented immigrants.
Now, for people who say, well, of course, because there's more U.S. citizens than there are undocumented migrants.
So it's for every 100,000.
So it takes into consideration per capita.
Yes, exactly.
Dr. Ernesto Castañeda Tinoco studies immigration.
We've talked to some people saying them crossing over into the U.S. automatically constitutes a crime because there's falsification of paperwork.
Yes, there was this idea that to be an immigrant was to be a criminal, that to be illegal was to break the law. It's an old idea that we have in the U.S. since Bush was in office for the first time.
Abramar and her daughter traveled more than 2,000 miles from Venezuela to Texas and finally Washington, D.C. She doesn't want to talk about how she got into the U.S.
Are the migrants coming over, are they criminals?
No.
Who are they?
En diferentes países hay buenos y malos, y hay todas clases de personas, y venimos para acá con la finalidad de ser alguien mejor, de brindarle un bienestar a nuestros familiares y tener la posibilidad de estar mejor a como estábamos en Venezuela.
Would you do it again?
No, no volvería a arriesgar la vida de mi hija ni la mía.
While Washington lawmakers continue to battle over immigration, Sheriff Martinez brought us to a section of the border that looks like a political graveyard on the issue. This is significant for you. Why?
Because it represents basically 3 types of fencing structures.
So this used to be the H.W. Bush wall.
Yes.
What's that?
That's the Trump fence.
What is this right here?
So I call that the Biden fence.
So this is the H.W. fence. That was the Trump fence. And in order to take this down, they had to put this up. This seems like a patchwork.
Yes. Now, you wouldn't do this at your house.
This is your house.
This is my house. You know, we've been riding on a flat tire for the last 15, 20 years. Just so happens that the wheel fell off now.
Omar Villafranca, CBS News, Del Rio, Texas.
We will have more stories all week as we begin to count down to the 2024 elections. America Decides on the issues right here on CBS News.